religion, oppression, and all those matters. After that film, it's about 30 minutes, we're going to have a short chat about why he made it and what he thinks. After that, as first note of order, there's going to be a short break. And when I say short, it's going to be really short. There will be drinks for you, free, at the ready, at the bar. Don't hesitate to grab a drink and bring it back to your chair, because after that, we're going to start with the second half of the night, and that is, I say discussion, but it's more of an exchange of ideas with three powerhouses of women, and they're sitting here. And the first of them is Seyran Ateş, human rights lawyer, female Imam, founder of the first liberal mosque in Berlin, activist, writer. Have I forgotten anything? She's done so much, people. And it generally boils down to making the world a better place for women and girls. And she shares that goal with Shirin Musa, who is sitting next to her. And if you are Dutch, you might have heard of her. Well, I think you have, if you're interested in these kinds of things, because she is the founder of Femme for Freedom, a famous activist in Holland, and she single-handedly put the phrase marital captivity on the political agenda, and there is now legislation against it. She will talk a little bit more about what it exactly is, and she's won a plethora of prizes for it as well, I suppose, rightfully so. Last but not least, I don't know if I can find it, she's back there. It's Fawzia Afzal-Kahn, the sharp mind of Miss Afzal-Kahn. She's a scholar, an academic, a professor in English, a former director of the Women's Studies Institute at Montclair University in New York. She's also a visiting professor of NYU in Abu Dhabi, and she has also written a bestseller. And it's called, and I'm going to have a peek here, it's called Shattering the Stereotypes Muslim Women Speak Out. So I think there's enough to talk about, and obviously after our discussion, there will be plenty of time for you, the audience, to have questions as well. So I hope you'll enjoy the evening. It's going to be about, feminism and religion, and maybe at the end of the evening we'll have a plan to break down the patriarchy. Who knows? But for now, I'm going to shut up and just watch Holy Mama. Was dat dus? Okay.
Muslims are retards. Muslims are terrorists. Muslims are refugees. Muslims are oil sheikhs. I'm a Muslim. My mother is a Muslim. My father was a Muslim. He worked as a diplomat from the 1950s until the 80s. He was the one who earned the money. But it was my mother who ran our family. My father always needed her for advice, for strategies, for solutions. His biggest mistakes came when he did not consult her. She was the real captain of our ship. I'm used to being surrounded by strong women, not only in my family, but in all families. I mean, all Muslim families that were around us. The only thing I never understood was why these strong women, these smart women, were willing to follow a sub-secondary position to men. Was it really because of just tradition? Or was it because of our religion and the culture of violence within it? Why did these women not stand up? Why did these strong women not fight for change in Islam? These are the discussions my mother and I are having over and over and over.
कैसे बताएंगे बातें ये मज़हब में अल्लाह मियाँ ने दिया मगर कैसे दिया आपकी नज़र में?
देख वही देना कुरान शरीफ में लिखा हुआ है लोग अपने मतलब की बात करते हैं ना जो हमारे प्रीस हैं मुल्ला हैं मौलवी हैं वो अपने मतलब की बात करते हैं ना
मगर ये मज़हब आप सच्चीमुच इस मज़हब में बिलीव करती हैं?
नहीं मैं बिलीव करती जाहिर नहीं करती
کاری شر ساعت یک دست بکر حیا ام بجنها بردوامه شروانی یه بکی و یه پیجی براستی برخدانیه که مزن کر او برخدانیش ایراده که خورد خاطیه نه ایراده خورد گلبا شروانه براستی کم بر خوابده
और आपकी नज़र में ये औरत इमाम बन सकती है?
अगर और देखें ना, ठीक है, जैसे हुक्म हुआ है कि भाई आप ना लड़ाई में अगर मर्द नहीं है तो औरत अपने आप को डिफेंस कर सकती है और बराबर का लड़ सकती है। तो इसी तरह अगर औरत इमाम बन के अपने औरतों को नमाज पढ़ा रही है तो कोई गलत बात नहीं है, ना नहीं पढ़ाती।
Am Anfang war die Idee, lediglich eine Moschee zu gründen, weil ich 2009 bis 2006 Mitglied der Deutschen Islamkonferenz war. An dieser Konferenz teilnehmen konnte ich sehen, wie die Verbände, die konservativen Fundamentalisten für sich in Anspruch genommen haben, für alle Muslime und für den Islam in Deutschland zu sprechen. Deshalb habe ich gemeint, wir als liberale Muslime, die den Islam zeitgemäß, modern und europäisch leben, wir brauchen auch einen Ort und eine Stimme. Einen Ort zu schaffen für Frauen und Männer, wo sie gleichberechtigt sein können, für LGBT-Menschen, dass sie ohne Probleme ihre sexuelle Identität auch verleugnen müssen, den Islam leben können. Und während ich mich mit der Idee beschäftigt habe, eine Moschee zu gründen, habe ich mich natürlich auch mit meiner Religion noch intensiver beschäftigt als viel früher. Und dann kam mir mittendrin die Idee zu sagen, warum bin ich nicht auch selber eine Imamin? Warum bin ich nicht selber auch eine Religious Leader? Warum bin ich nicht eine Autorität? Warum kann ich nicht auch Autorität sein? Ich habe so viel Wissen über meine Religion, also kann ich auch das praktizieren. Und für diese Gemeinde bin ich auch anerkannt als die Imamin, auch wenn viele Leute mich nicht anerkennen als Imamin. Das müssen sie nicht. Aber meine Gemeinde erkennt mich an und für sie bin ich das.
और आदमियों को आप चाहती हैं कि औरत आदमियों को भी पढ़ाए?
क्योंकि ये माशरा पढ़ाने नहीं देगा, उसको ख़त्म कर देगा औरत को।
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Als Kind, ich habe zwei Leben. Ich führe ein Doppelleben. Wenn ich von zu Hause loslaufe, dann bin ich die Tochter von den Menschen aus der Türkei, also türkisch-kurdisch. Ich laufe los und in der Mitte, auf dem Weg zur Schule, da bin ich ein Neutrum. Da bewege ich mich in einem Bereich, der ist sehr neutral und klar. Und wenn ich dann in der Schule ankomme, bin ich Deutsch. Und da in der deutschen Schule als Deutsche habe ich als Kind wahrgenommen. Zum Deutschsein gehört frei sein, selbstbestimmt sein. Die Lehrer haben mich gefördert. Sie haben gefragt, welche Interessen ich habe. Ich habe Wissen bekommen. Und deshalb habe ich mein türkisches Zuhause und die deutsche Schule als zwei unterschiedliche Orte wahrgenommen. Und ich liebte die Schule. Ich wollte am liebsten in der Schule schlafen. Ich wollte gar nicht aus der Schule weg. Das war der Ort der Freiheit. Und zu Hause war es der Ort für mich ganz persönlich der Ort des Eingesperrtsein. Nun, es war eigentlich immer subtil, dass nicht nur meine Eltern, sondern unsere Familie, unsere Sippe, also die Großfamilie, einem das Gefühl vermittelte, Mädchen werden anders behandelt und Jungs, weil sie unterschiedlichen Geschlechts sind. Und so war für mich wirklich sehr früh klar, okay, die Jungs werden aufgrund ihres Geschlechts besser behandelt und die Mädchen aufgrund ihres Geschlechts schlechter. Und diese Unterschiede habe ich eigentlich schon als 5-, 6-, 7-, 8-jähriges Kind mitbekommen und als Teenager dann erst recht realisiert, es ist das Geschlecht. Also Mädchen haben zwischen ihren Beinen die Ehre. Kızların bacaklarının arasında namus. Also dieses Wort namus war ganz schnell ein Begriff in meinem Leben. Yani namus kelimesi, Türkçe söyleyeyim daha güzel. Çünkü namusu Almanca'ya tercüme etmek de biraz zor. Yani kavramı biraz zor. 100 sene önce Avrupa'da da namus kelimesi namus olarak algılanıyordu ama şu an 2018 yılında ya da şu nesilde şöyle diyebiliriz. Namus kelimesi halen Türk toplumunun içinde, Türkiye'liler içinde, Kürtler de arasında tabii farklı bir değer taşıyor. Namus kelimesi hayatıma girmesiyle birlikte namus elden gider korkusu, namustan korkmak lazım. Neyle alakalı olduğunu yani direkt böyle cinselliğiyle alakalı olduğunu kimse söylemiyor. Subtitle. Erkeklere ama gelirse onların cinselliği çok pozitif bir şey, güzel bir şey, kutsal bir şey. Kızlarınki de ama böyle korunması gerekir. O namus elden giderse bütün ailenin namusu gider, yüzü gider, hasiyeti, seviyesi, her şey gider korkusu. Ondan büyüdüm. Korkunç bir kavram. Onun için her köşe başında seni herkes kontrol ediyor. Ha, o nereye gitti, bu nereye gitti, şu nereye gitti, kim kimden konuştu, kim nerede? Sosyal kontrol oradan geliyor tabii ki. Namusa dikkat etmek gerekiyor. Das hat viel mit Macht zu tun. Die Macht über andere Menschen, die Macht über das andere Geschlecht. Und das hat viel mit dem Patriarchat zu tun, weil man die Frauen im Grunde genommen als Sklavinnen, als Bedienstete, als Ehefrauen, Sexualpartner, fast Sexsklavinnen tatsächlich für sich missbraucht. Und so führt die Herrschaft des Mannes, des Patriarchats dazu, dass die Kontrolle über der Frau, über den Körper der Frau auch ausgebaut wird. Und deshalb muss man dann, wenn man in diesem System denkt, die Menstruation und das Teenagersein, die Bedürfnisse nach Sexualität, alles muss man kontrollieren, damit eine Frau, das weibliche Geschöpf sozusagen, gar nicht auf die Idee kommt zu sagen, mein Körper, ich mache damit, was ich will.
We have the same amount of brains like men. I mean, we go to schools and university, we drive cars, we have our own living. I mean, we're not living in the Middle Ages, we're living in 2018. You know, the only thing what we don't have is a penis. It's about complete self-determination. The right to kiss, the right to fall in love. Then even policymakers say, well, this is a taboo. I mean, the Muslim communities, they cannot deal with it. That makes me angry that, hey, you fought for these rights and we are fighting for the same things. Here, I mean, you know, it's well, they think that everything is done. We have the rights to vote, we have equal rights when it comes to legislation. but well, they look away. I mean, they're not considering it important enough. And that's why we try to raise awareness within the communities, but also in the public debate with campaigns. The KISS campaign, the campaign on forced marriages and female genital mutilation, so that people know that these things are also going on here in Europe. That it's not only an issue of the developing countries. People think it happens in Africa only, but it also happens to girls from the African communities here in the Netherlands. They are taken away in the summer back to the countries of origin, and then they are, well, they undergo the female genital mutilation. The moment you stand up for the rights of women within the patriarchal communities, the Muslim communities, they say, well, you know, you're demonizing the community or Islam, and I disagree with it. I think change always happens from within, bottom up. And I mean, we Muslim feminists, or feminists with a Muslim background, we have to fight for change or advocate for change at different levels, within the community and also within the system.
Freedom मानो, उनको कन्वर्स करो। ये बात गलत है। और मुल्कों में देखे ना, बहुत सारे ऐसे मुल्क हैं जो नाम मुस्लिम हैं और बहुत सारे मुस्लिम भी अच्छे हैं। ये नहीं कि पांचों उंगलियां सब खराब होते हैं, लेकिन अच्छे जो है ना वो कम है। दुनिया में कहीं भी होता है ना, आदमी अपने पावर ज्यादा दिखाता है। आदमी जो होता है ना, एक किस्म से बुज़दिल होता है, वो अपनी ताकत को आजमाता है। औरत जो होती है वो अंदर से बहुत स्ट्रांग होती है, लेकिन ऐसे ताकतवर नहीं होती।
Well, in my case, I am born in Pakistan. I was 6 months when I came to the Netherlands. And when I got married, I also got married according to Dutch civil law and also Islamic tradition. And when we separated, my ex-husband refused to give me the Islamic divorce, while he did agree with the Dutch divorce. For him, there was no consequence. For me, staying married to him according to Pakistani law means that I could not remarry. And if I did, then I would be considered as an adulterous woman or a bigamist. And the same is with all other countries, that you have to marry according to two traditions and also divorce according to the two traditions. Otherwise, you'll be prosecuted if you don't. Well, I went to the civil court and requested the judge to define my situation of marital captivity as a wrongful act and a violation of human rights. And I also requested the judge to give him a penalty for each day he refused to give me the Islamic divorce. And well, that's what she did. It became a legal precedent. And we campaigned to make this known within the communities and the professional, that there is a way out when you are living in marital captivity. And at the same time, we also advocated for change of legislation in Dutch Parliament to criminalize marital captivity. And well, the Parliament accepted our idea, and well, now it is also a criminal offense. And from that moment onwards, we thought, well, it's still not enough. We also have to advocate for change of legislation in civil law, to mention it specific and not only, you know, having it in that precedent. And we campaigned for this idea in 2012, in 2014, and in 2017. And the good news is that the Minister of Legal Protection, he wrote a letter to our parliament that he will present a new law on this issue very soon, and we will be involved. We need much more because it's not a national problem, it's an international problem. So recently we went to European Parliament to discuss the issue and the injustice of marital captivity, not only from Muslim perspective, but also from Jewish, Hindu, and you know, different perspectives that it exists all over, and there is a clash between, well, sometimes there is a clash between religion and law. When we look to the United Kingdom, I mean, they have the Sharia courts as a solution, but well, I think that we have to also find solutions in secular law, because in religious law, I mean, women have lesser rights than men, and in secular law, we can, I mean, we can find solutions and say that, you know, I mean, we do have equal rights.
Tell me.
What?
Like, why is it so difficult for men to support women in making the change?
I mean, look at you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a man from a Muslim background, in fact, and I mean, why not think about men like you? They do exist, you know, within Islam, within and without Islam, in every culture, every society of every religious or non-religious background. I mean, there always have been. I mean, I have students in I'm teaching this class on transnational feminism, and one of our early lectures, the women were like, how come there are no men in this class? They're not taking the class, you know? And I said, yes, it's a problem to get men to take classes that have feminism in their title. So in a general way, you're right. I mean, men seem to shy away from that word feminism.
Does it matter who I love? I don't think so. I was late. I wasn't, yeah, I say that. I wasn't into anyone, no male or female. When I found out, I thought, okay, this is wrong. I'm not sure what I was scared to tell, because we had a teacher at school and everyone was making fun of her because she was gay. I kept it quite a time for myself. I did some research because I wanted to know what was going to happen to me, because I didn't know anything about it, and you had to go to the library to read about it, and there was no internet and stuff, so you had to get books and whatever, but there was no one like me that was worrying me, because I was thinking, okay, what's my religion going to say about it? What are my parents going to say about it? And my friends, will they still like me or not? In the beginning I was scared I would go to hell or something. But then I was thinking, okay, well, if all the non-religious people would go to hell, it would be really busy. I was in many debates, and there was one guy specific, and he was an Imam. I remember the others were maybe scared of him, or felt like they couldn't go against what he was saying, because he was putting LGBT people on the level of criminals, of murderers, of whatever. And I was really angry about that, because I said, you don't know me. Why are you to judge me and put me on the same level with people who are criminal? What does it matter to you who I love? Tell me. I can't agree with you. And maybe I'm a better person than you. You don't know that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't let people have that power over me anymore. And I think that's the way to set yourself free as well. I know it's hard and scared in the beginning, but in the end they're not paying your bills. They're not, yeah. I don't know if you can find your way to be who you want to be. And I think, it freed me to accept myself. That's the main thing. If you accept yourself and you have friends and relatives and family who supports you, then no one else has that power over you anymore. Well, I came from a small town in the east of the country, and it was mainly a Dutch community. And we had a few Moroccan families, so I went to Dutch schools and I had Dutch friends, and I was wondering if I would go to the army or to the police, and I decided to go to the police. I was thinking, okay, look, I'm gonna carry a gun. I have to take control in a split second about my life or other one's lives, so I have to be fully in control. I don't have to hold back in any way. So that helped me to make steps also about my how you say that, about my LGBT identity. So I was very open about that. Look, in society everyone can say what they want to me if they want, and that's okay, because I think that's not personal. It's against my uniform. I can take that, and it's part of my work. But as a colleague, I have to know how it works in your brain. Some of them had some views and they didn't know that they had these views. It's not about their being racist or stuff, but just never thought about it, never had, because we had, especially in the class I was in the beginning, there were more people from the very white communities, and they had barely spoken to anyone with a minority background, and they had opinions about them, and they didn't know anyone. So yeah, that was we had some conflicts. Yeah, there was no role model for me these days. The only white male. That wasn't for me an example I wanted to be. So I was thinking, okay, where are all the people who are like me? Where are they? I have interviews and people say, okay, she's an Islamic gay ambassador. What the hell happened? It's still sad. A policewoman being born in the Netherlands, raised in the Netherlands, went to white schools, have Moroccan parents, I speak languages, whatever. But they made me only being Muslim and gay. And also for the people who think Islam is a big issue. Is Islam a big issue? Or are we being told that it's been a big issue?
I've told you this before and I'm going to tell it to you again. Is there a burden that I feel around this issue of Muslim womanhood? Yeah, there is. I mean, on the one hand, okay, when I was growing up in Pakistan, I grew up in a Muslim majority country, and I had friends, I had parents, I had relatives who were, most of them were Muslims. I had obviously non-Muslim friends as well, but we did not go around proclaiming, I am Muslim, look at me, I am Muslim, this is how I dress, this is how you know I'm Muslim, morning, noon and night, I'm Muslim. I mean, come on, you know, and then I come to the West, okay, and it was fine for a while until, you know, a few decades later when obviously this rise in what I'm calling a kind of Islamist mentality started to manifest itself, and all of a sudden around me, and of course it became much more exacerbated after 9/11 when people from Muslim communities started to feel threatened and put upon and looked at to prove either the fact that they were, not terrorists or, unpatriotic to the US, which is where I was living, and that in order to do that, they felt that they had to go back to some sense of their identity as Muslims and to declare this proudly. So there, you know, within the Muslim community, I started to also see this rise, which was kind of what was happening back home in Pakistan as well, is like, oh my God, you know, everything was inshallah, Allahu Akbar, Jazakallah. I mean, morning, noon and night, you know, everybody who was of any kind of quote Muslim background was into like proclaiming their Muslimness. It was ridiculous. And I felt like this is not who I am. Islam is very important to me as my identity, but it is one part of many other layers of my identity, okay? So I was comfortable just being who I was, and now all of a sudden I had to go around, you know, waving a flag. This is ridiculous. On the other hand, unfortunately, you know, I'm being asked over and over again, especially because I'm a public speaker, given that I'm an academic, oh, Fawzia, what does it feel like? All of a sudden, all these friends who couldn't give two hoots before were like, what does it feel like to be Muslim? Oh my God, you're so unusual. You're a Muslim woman, but look how, you know, you seem so, you're not really oppressed like your other sisters. I mean, or were you oppressed? You know,
Ibrahim, would you mind standing up? Yeah, we're going to do it like that. This is Ibrahim Quraishi, the maker.
Good evening.
Work in progress. Good to have you here. Well, I think the question on anybody's mind after seeing this is, how's your mom?
She just had an eye operation 2 weeks ago, but she's doing great.
Is she okay?
Yeah, she's really okay.
What did she think of the film?
She thinks it's a bit too conservative.
Too conservative?
Yeah. I sent her the clip. She said, come on, you have to be more sexual, you have to be more artistic. She wanted more of the work to come out, and she said one thing, that she wanted, she was really blown away by all three, and really respects towards women who believe, because she is a believer. But she said, normally she sees nudity in my work. And she was shocked not to see nudity in this work.
There we go.
But she did have one phrase. She said, why the burqa?
Really?
She didn't like it.
Do you mind explaining?
Yes. Look, there are very few things that are transgressive today, right, for us. So it's one thing to see someone wearing a burqa, a shadoor, in public, but it's another thing to have it in your proximity. So there's a dislocation in reality. It is a reality that we're living in. And as a man, I believe that I have no right to tell what a woman should wear. So the burqa is as much part of the reality, whether we like it or not. So that's why.
Okay. And this film is also about religion. Yes. Are you religious?
I try to be spiritual.
You try to be spiritual. Are you a believer in Islam, maybe?
Well, I grew up in a very steeped Islamic tradition.
Yes.
Very steeped, in fact. So I cannot escape it, you know. And I think that it would be idiotic in a way to deny it. Yeah. To deny the spiritual, the political, the social aspects of it. But on the other hand, I do believe in an ethical interpretation of Islam and of any religion for those who believe in religion.
You've been speaking to these women about feminism, about Islam. Do you think, yes or no question, do you think they go together, if you're honest?
It's not up for me to determine.
But what do you think?
What do I think? I think that we are living in a very complex reality, we always have. And I think really, not only because of the #MeToo movement, but it's really time that men step back and really allow women, not even allow, give breath to women to take over, to have power positions, to be able to really, to be able to really terminate the oppression of women that is over 30,000 years old. So I think it's high time.
And that can be established within religion or without? What do you think?
I mean, obviously it is. I mean, we have reformed female rabbis, we have reformed priests, we have reformed imams. So of course, for the believer, of course, I think that we are living in a world, hopefully, that there are multiple possibilities. For those who accept whatever spirituality or ideology that they wish to accept.
You mentioned the men.
Yes.
There are a few here as well. You're one yourself.
Yes.
What is your responsibility?
Well, you know, I come from a very oppressive tradition. And as a man, I say that most of men, whether we're in the West, the East, the North, the South, we are the oppressors. We are the primary obsessors of our second sex, of our second equal sex. So we have a massive responsibility to correct the injustices. So in all spheres, yes. In my view, the reason I'm making this movie is not to highlight myself, but really to how to say it, to give a possibility that women that are strong, that are intellectually vibrant, that are questioning whatever they wish, that they have a broader visibility. And I do believe this. When minorities speak of oppression, most people don't listen. But when the majority starts talking about it, people begin to listen. So when women talk about problems of women, men really don't listen. But when men begin to speak about it, that it is not a woman's problem, that in fact it's a male problem, then hopefully there will be some resonance. Yeah. So that's one of the motives behind it.
Will you be going out and about speaking to conservative believers from any religion, saying, listen to me, you need to do this to set women free?
I'm not a politician. I only have a specific gaze, a specific view. But I profoundly believe that I don't need to do that because, not that I don't need to do it, how to put it gently? There are those who don't want to accept certain aspects of our current reality, right? The point is that it's very difficult to change because they are believing in a certain specific orthodox modality. I'm not generally interested in that. I think the middle majority is much larger. And I think that if we give way, women and men together, in whatever spheres we're in, give way to show and to present an essence of equality, then yes, it's much, yeah.
On that note, I think it's time for a short break. Thank you so much, Ibrahim. Give him a hand, please. Thank you. There will be drinks at the bar. Don't hesitate to take one and take it back in, because in a few minutes we'll be starting with the rest of, well, I say the rest, with the other half of the evening. Thank you. Oké.
Ik zit vaak ook boven bij de techniek, dus eigenlijk altijd de leukste plek.
Ja, snap ik. Ja. Oh,
Als je iets mis gaat, kun je niks meer doen.
Alright.
Zit je daar lekker.
It's quite a full house. Ah, you got a lot of people.
I've been asked to ask you if you remember speaking into the microphone.
Yes, okay.
Would you like to move here? That I can move over there? No, oh, it's okay. Yes. Seats here. What? Thank you.
Some water?
Yes, please.
I can give you some water.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
okay.
you.
Then you take it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure thing. So do you speak any Urdu or no?
My mother tongue is Persian. Is Farsi.
Hi, I hope you're all comfortable with a drink because we're now going to continue with the second half of this evening with the ladies I've already introduced, but I'm just going to remind you again because this is Seyran Ateş, female Imam, human rights activist and human rights lawyer, Shirin Musa, founder of Femme for Freedom and an activist, and Fawzia Afzal-Kahn, scholar, academic. Well, you all know her because you've just seen the film, and I'm sure you're reminded of what she said. Oh, that's fine. Sorry, there's some water on the table, but that is fine. I would like to start with you. Thank you so much for being here. You've had a full day of speeches and debate and everything. One of the themes in the film and just generally in your life, I suppose, is the combination of Islam and feminism. Mm-hmm. And there's this secular way of thinking, maybe stimulated by the second wave of Western feminists. That religion and feminism, they don't mix. What do you think?
I think that feminists also can be spiritual and can have this feeling and the necessity to believe in something which is not proved or not be proved. And what is religion about?
Mm-hmm.
So
what is it about?
What is it about? And I think for feminists also it can be that they feel that there is something which gives them help and power and give them answers maybe for questions which are not able to be answered here in our life, in this kind of life of human. Yes. So it's a question of spirituality. And why a woman or a man who is fighting in this life for human rights should not be in a point in his life where they believe more in some higher power. That was always the situation with me. I believed in God when I was a child. I believed in God when I was a young girl, and it was a big job. So I loved the scene with you. What you explained that you don't understand why everybody is running around and shouting, "I am a Muslim. I am such a great Muslim, and I am the best Muslim." It made me confused because in my family, it was really calm and really silent. Nobody treat somebody else to be a good Muslim, and nobody waked up people. Come on, stand up, you have to pray. And when people pray in our family, and I'm coming really from a huge, big family, Turkish and Kurdish, you can explain, you can imagine, and many, many children on both sides. And I have so many aunts and uncles and cousins. And when I went to Turkey, in Germany, the same. Somebody wants to pray, they just go and pray and come. And nobody, sometimes you don't even realize that they're gone and come back and they prayed in between. Sometimes we open the door to search for something. And that's how I grew up as a child. I go in a sleeping room and I want to take something, and I see, oh, my grandfather or my father or my mom, somebody's praying. So I just close the door and wait. And they come out very silent and don't shout, I just prayed. Have you seen that I prayed? You know?
I ask this also
so
because...
this is what I grew up with, last sentence, that people around me tell me, my family, if you believe in God, it is something between you in your heart and God. This is my absolutely big, great law in religion. It's something between me and God.
About the God, I looked up Simone de Beauvoir, for instance, and she says, I'm just going to quote here because I don't know this by heart, and she says, man enjoys the great advantage of having a God endorse the code he writes. I think the question behind that is, why would you want to belong to a religion where the code is written by a man? In her...
It's patriarchy.
Patriarchy.
I love Simone de Beauvoir. I grew up with her. You know, she's one of my biggest role model for being a feminist, for sure. But it's patriarchy. What is
so it's
about.
Not religion. It's the patriarchy.
No, yes, that's it. That's it. It's a patriarchy, and I used to write all the time, and even in my books also, and I used to say that every time, I'm not fighting against Islam, I'm fighting against patriarchy. As our Christian sisters and brothers do, Jewish people do, so, and Buddhists and Hindus, in all religions, women have to fight against patriarchy. We have to fight in patriarchy also in the society where people are not believe in God. So it's the question is, and the issue is patriarchy.
And do you believe progress is being made? Progress is possible? Because even after decennia, after, in the 70s, women all fled the Christian church. I mean, it's still a patriarchal society. Are you hopeful in that respect?
Absolutely. I was sitting with a Catholic sister last week in a Catholic academy, and she was not wearing the hijab. She's coming from the monastery. She's the leader of the monastery, and she doesn't have the ordination clothes. You know, she's wearing clothes like civil clothes, and she said nobody has to tell me what I have to wear. I want to be inside the society, in between the humans. So I don't want to be seen as a point inside all those groups, you know. So everybody has his own answers.
And this combination of themes is also very, it makes for a heated debate, especially now. I mean,
emotional.
As we saw this afternoon as well. If we look at the political climate surrounding Islam and feminism, on the one hand, there is a rise of the radical right, like the last few weeks in Chemnitz in Germany, for instance, and on the other hand, there seems to be a rise of the fundamentalist Islam. How do you navigate between that as a woman?
I start navigating in between that in my head when I was 15.
Okay, I thought when you were born.
So sometimes I'm really tired about that. 1983, my first book was published, and I was writing about the living situation of Turkish and Kurdish girls and women, forced marriage, and so on, in 1983, ladies and gentlemen. And in 1984, people shot me and a woman who was sitting nearby me in a women's center where I just read a letter for her, and I translate that from German in Turkish. And one man come in and shot. Why? Because we opened a place for women from Turkey where they learned write and read German and come together and talk about their problems. And finally, what they did, they was learning, standing on their own feet and be a little bit more self-determinated. And if they are victims of domestic violence, we help them. So that was the reason for some people to say we have to close and destroy this place. And they even were willing to kill people, and they did, they tried. So it was in my 21, in this age. What happened, and now I come to your question. When I talked about this man and said, a Turkish man shot us, he shot me. Germans criticized me to say that he was Turkish because it could be used by right wings against foreigners. So what I want to say is, since the 80s, I have to navigate between these things, and my answer is, you know, I don't give up my political brain. I'm sorry. Please think twice. The right wing was feeded because of the idea of the fear to feed them. Because we don't talk about the main issues. We don't talk about violence, forced marriage, FGM, and all the stuff. We don't talk about that because people were afraid that the right wing could use that. That feed them and make them bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is a sentence which I also write in all my books. Please take these issues, and we have to find solution against forced marriage, honor killings, and domestic violence, especially in Muslim families, is different than in German or Dutch families. We have that also in Dutch families and German families, but there's a little bit, even when it's a little bit different. So let's talk about all those issues. But many people prefer not to talk.
Are you worried now because there seems to be a rise in both camps?
I'm fighting against racism and right wings also, since I can. I start my political career or political activism. It's rising, and I'm optimistic that Europe will make it when they come together. The nations come together against these right wings.
Fawzia, I saw you nodding somewhere along this line. What is your view on this, on the way that you have to navigate if you speak up about women's rights within religion or about Muslim women?
So first of all, thank you for having me, and I'm very honored to be on this panel with these distinguished women. And but my experience and my way of looking at this is a little bit different. Which is to say that, there's a book by Karima Benoon called Your Fatwa Doesn't Apply Here, 2013. Very interesting book because she's Algerian-American, and she sort of looks at the rise of what we call or understand as Islamic fundamentalism or extremism. Neither word I'm very happy with, but extremism perhaps more than fundamentalism. But anyway, in the context of Algeria, but where she gets to, which is really where I find myself located in answer to your question, is that we're really talking about competing right-wing extremisms, right? So the fight is between the right and the right. Not between, the West and the East or the North and the South in that particular religious context. It's between two right-wing ideologies that use religion to mask what are very, very long, complex historical problems, which predate the current moment that we find, but are very much related to it. So we have to look at, my own work has been on colonial history and colonial and into what we call post-colonial. But of course we are not post-colonial at all, right? I mean, the fact is the ills of colonial rule in over 3/4 of this world, right, by Western European powers has now been replaced by sort of neo-imperial and neo-colonial hegemonies in those regions.
How do you mean?
So,
can you explain that?
I mean, for example, we've got the Iraq War, we've got, the redrawing of the map of the Middle East, we've got, you know, all of the wars that are continuing, the Syrian war and so on, you know, what happened in Pakistan thanks to, you know, a proxy war between the US and the USSR next door, which has led in turn, you know, to problems of immigration that we see plaguing societies in Europe and in the US today. So for me, it is not useful to extrapolate particular topics that can become easily, unfortunately, sensationalized when we talk about things like forced marriages or FGM, which is not to say that they don't exist, because of course they do and they must be addressed, but they cannot be taken as hot point issues without looking at the larger historical, socio-economic context. So for me, it's much more important to talk about where is the, you know, what is happening economically. Okay, what is happening to, including immigrant communities, where a lot of these problems are being pinpointed as problem areas that cause some of those problems to continue? Why are people regressing, right? And why does suddenly, you know, some of these horrible practices surface as, well, this is a return to our tradition, or holding on to that something called tradition. Traditions are not fixed anywhere. They change, people change. But when you pinpoint and you know, you sort of look at communities as unchanging and you do not give them the opportunities and the respect that they deserve, then they often harden into the most extremist positions within those communities as a way of, excuse me, giving everybody else the finger. You can see I'm very fond of using the middle finger. So, I mean, you know, I think that all of this work is important. I think people have to take stands. My stand is to look at the larger geopolitical economic situations and then talk about women's rights from within that perspective, so that I feed neither into Islamophobia, which is a huge problem, nor into Islamism, which is another huge problem.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Shirin, you're an activist. You're standing with your feet in the mud, as they say in the Netherlands, and you've been fighting for better rights, more equal rights for women and girls. How do you feel? You work in the Netherlands predominantly. You work all over, but predominantly. How do you feel that your work, Muslim women, are being viewed? Are they being taken seriously? Are they being talked with or talked to? What's your experience?
Well, I'm very practical. I'm not an academic and also not a theologist. That's also what I said constantly to Ibrahim, that I don't want to talk too much about Islam and religion. But when we look to issues like female genital mutilation, forced marriages, I mean, it's not a Muslim monopoly. I mean, there are so many facts and figures that it happens in all communities, even in the United States, in Christian communities, in Africa, all over. But there are similarities and there are differences. And for me, as a very practical activist, and for my team, we advocate, I mean, we just tell stories, and we have a legal aid office, and different women, they come to us, and whatever we see happening in daily life, in their practical issues, the gaps in policy and legislations, we write lobby documents for local parliaments and national parliament, that these are our suggestions. And what I see within Dutch politics is that we are supported by the majority of the MPs, whether they are left or right. From the Dutch Socialist Party, for example, until the VVD. So we are supported, but when we look when it comes to policy making or getting involved by policymakers, they exclude us. And
how's that?
Well, I mean, we're not sitting at the table. I mean, we're some sort of a opposition party.
Who is sitting at the table then?
Well, organizations who are subsidized. I mean, Dutch women's rights organizations. I mean, they are sitting at the table. Academics, but not the activists.
And the religious leaders?
And the religious leaders, of course, not to forget, because that's how the Dutch landscape is. They always involve religious leaders, community leaders.
How does that work out in your specific point that they say, I don't know who these they are, but policymakers, they listen to you? And they say, well, you could just go talk with the people in the mosque, or how does that go?
Well, I mean, they invite them to, for example, develop tools. Against marital captivity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have those tools. I mean, we give it all for free, and we have private funding. Or they get involved when it comes to, think about solutions on marital captivity, forced marriages, honor violence, and all other topics.
Mm-hmm.
To be very concrete, recently the city of Rotterdam, they have involved a Dutch lawyer or a Dutch Moroccan lawyer who is a strong, believer, and he supports Sharia councils. And
what is Sharia council? Because I don't know.
Sharia courts,
knows.
like they have in the United Kingdom,
what do they do?
They give divorce verdicts, or they listen to both parties, to men and women, and after many years and after paying them a lot of money, they give a divorce verdict document. So we have a huge track record. I mean, we defined the word of marital captivity, we fought for legislation, and so much more. And whatever there is now in the Netherlands, it's due to us. Mm-hmm. But to give the example of the national policymakers or the local policymaker, like the city of Rotterdam, one of the 4 biggest cities in the Netherlands. They don't ask women's rights activists for advice or to sit there at the table to think for solutions when it comes to harmful and traditional practices, but they involve a lawyer who advocates for Sharia courts. And that's something which really makes me angry, that, hey, where are you heading to? And do you really want to have change, or do you want to have us in that, position of not sitting at the table to think, from the perspective and needs of women, and within the framework of, Dutch law and human rights? But no, they involve a lawyer who advocates for Sharia councils, and that's something...
what does that tell you? Does that tell you that they take you seriously? Or?
No, they're not taking us seriously. We are angry Muslim women. That's how they look at us, as if we don't have brains. And they always involve men, and white feminists. And I'm not saying, hey, we are the only one who wants to talk about this. No, we need everybody. We need a coalition and involve people who think... from the perspective of complete gender equality, nothing more and nothing less.
Now, Fawzia, we talked earlier, and part of your work is about the construct of the Muslim woman. Can you expand on that? What is that? How do we view her? Is there anything to say about that?
Well, I think it's sort of really what I've said before, which is to say that I think women, Muslim women particularly, are constructed as Muslim in a very particular way in a number of different discourses. So my interest is in absolutely the discursive, construction of what it means to be Muslim. And again, there you become hampered by images that are circulating, and often those images are harmful, coming from all of the camps, right?
Can you describe an image? What's like?
Yeah, well, for example, the idea of the Muslim woman as oppressed in very particular ways, as though that oppression does not exist, for other women coming from other traditions, religious or otherwise, right? We don't talk about sort of worldwide patriarchal oppressions that in fact exhibit themselves differently. And so it's not very useful to talk about a global patriarchy, because I think you do have to look at specific ways in which it gets exhibited, and it gets exhibited also according to class location of women.
Yes.
And we rarely talk about class. So when you have this construct, right, of Muslim womanhood, as a Muslim woman you must be, and you can fill in the blanks, that is nonsense, because Muslim women are differently situated in different locations in which they find themselves. So, for example, I grew up in Muslim majority Pakistan, as I've said before, but also I was part of an educated, urban, middle-class household, very much like what Seyran describes. My father was a religious man who said his prayers. He never once said, you all have to pray. Now get up now and start praying. I mean, it was between, his job was to educate us in his faith, and the rest really, particularly after a certain age, you become adults, it's really between you and your conscience. And I was definitely somebody who had a voice. I never felt I didn't have a voice. Was there patriarchal restraints? Of course there were. You know, there were certain things that my brother who was younger was allowed to do, perhaps that I wasn't. But I was a stronger person, and I did many, many things that women of a poorer class and men of a poorer socioeconomic class, including those who served as servants in my household, they were not able to do. Exactly. So for me to say, oh my God, because of being a Muslim woman, I had certain oppressions on me is absolute crap.
Exactly. Thank you for that, because...
how lucky for you.
But I'm sorry, that is true of a very large percentage of Muslim women, so that the problems you're talking about, they exist. They exist in very particular locations worse than in others, but they are not part of like the thing that, I mean, I didn't even know about FGM until I found out that, okay, in Egypt and Sudan, this practice exists, and that it has been carried by what? What's the percentage of Muslim in let's say, even in Holland right now? 4%? Excuse me. When I get excited, this is what happens. Within that, how many are actually being forced to undergo FGM? Is it a problem? It is. I don't want to be understood as saying, therefore, this is okay, we shouldn't talk about it, but to focus on that at the, exclusion of so many other problems, including access to education, including access to fair housing, including to, freedom to express themselves, freedom to travel. How are they being maintained in their own families in terms of, in the case of divorce? Forced captivity in marriage, sure. But I want to know what the percentages are. There are much larger problems that are plaguing not just Muslim communities, but generally people who have been left out of a neoliberal globalized paradigm that is swallowing up this world and is actually creating a lot of these problems that we are honing in on.
Can I just ask Seyran for a question? Oh, there goes my microphone.
Lucky for her. And
can I ask you for a response on that?
From Morocco to Indonesia, you can see a lot of different Islamic countries and a lot of women fighting for women's rights, and you cannot separate the issues and the problems.
What do you mean by that? You cannot
FGM, forced marriages, headscarf, no education, no opportunity to travel, no permission to work, whatever. All these things, you cannot divide them in more important and not that important, and there are much more important problems like the global situation of the geopolitical interests, and don't look to the basics. In German, you say you should not do one thing and let one thing subside. You should always look in the whole picture. And the whole picture is that we have a very special big politics, the geopolitical interests. You can see that in Syria, you can see that in Turkey. You can ask why the weapons industry is selling lots of weapons to regions where especially Muslims kill each other, because one is Sunni, one is Shia, one is Alevi, whatever, and the Kurdish people, we have seen them here. This is one thing. But these all cannot deny that in the basics, and here I'm speaking as a lawyer, that in the basics things are happening. While academicians, while politicians somehow are preferring discussing about Islamophobia, and this is a word what I don't like. It seems like sickness and illness. I prefer to talk about anti-Islam. and enemies of Islam and the racists and the Nazis against everything. And while we are discussing that we should not look for these tiny problems, the most Muslim women are living much better than the others. While we are doing that, the right wing is growing. This is what I try to explain. When it comes to the forced marriage, in 2003, I was the first lawyer who stand up and said, we need our own paragraph against forced marriage. The first reaction was from every side, oh my God, this is not important. How many people are forced marriage in Germany? Why we should have an own paragraph? You know, I'm a human rights fighter, and if you read the introduction of the human rights, you will see that we have to stand up for the human rights of each human, single human, not up 100 or 1,000 it makes sense to fight against. And the same as FGM, and it's not only in Sudan, in Egypt or in Sudan, it's also in Iraq, and there are many other countries where you can find it, and it's growing. And in Turkey, in my country, nobody could imagine that. 6 months ago, a man, an Imam, was in Turkish television and said, it's good for women to be also cut, yeah? They should be, because it's Islamic. So what I want to say is, the question of the numbers are inhuman for me as an activist and as a lawyer. Now I'm speaking as a lawyer. I'm a voice for women who cannot speak. Why I'm sitting here and I'm so penetrant. I'm so penetrant, go to talk shows and I'm writing books and I'm so loud. I'm trying to be loud because I have seen so many people and I'm working for them daily. The reason why I'm sitting here and talking to you is the same. I need multiplicatoren, to
multipliers, yes.
Multipliers who tell the next what's going on, and that there is help. You people who need help, they can have help here in Europe. This is why I'm doing that. And each single man and woman who's a victim of that is worse that we can help. And it's not a less problem than the geopolitical and the big problem. And then finally, it takes 8 years that we have, since 2011, an own paragraph against forced marriage. And in this time, I asked myself, how many people were killed in Germany or in Dutch? For example, ask yourself, why it's forbidden in criminal law. How many people were killed, murdered? Convicted, raped. How many people are victims of criminals? It's not a question of number. Why it comes to a question of number when it has to do something with women, especially, and with some cultural things and traditional things. We had the same discussion about the raping inside the marriage. The whole people, a lot of people laughed about that. Oh, when you are married, you cannot be raped by your own husband.
Yes.
It was the same discussion. So, again, to the numbers, the numbers are not possible to find out the real numbers because we are talking just about the summit of the iceberg. Because people cannot talk about that. It's a huge, huge problem under the water. This is what I try to talk. Does it mean we have it only with Muslims, as you said, Shirin? No, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
But this is the issue what we have in front of our door, and we should do the work in front of our door.
Yeah.
And last sentence with that. My fight for the own paragraph and against forced marriage was finally the reason why I have all this great men around me protecting me. You know why? Because I started the discussion to look in the traditions and the culture and the religious situation, because some of them take religious arguments, some say traditional arguments, cultural arguments, to force their kids to marry.
I don't think everybody knows, but you're being protected every day.
I'm protected every day by German police, yes, and thank you to German police, and thank you to also the Dutch police, because they and the Netherlands to protect me here. They are here around you. I'm sorry that maybe you're disturbed by that, but thank you for that.
So last topic for this, Shirin. Listening to all this, you would hope, I would hope, that there would be some solidarity with your causes from everybody, but mainly maybe from Western feminists. Do you find that? Do you get that?
Well, I just want to say something in addition.
Oh, sorry, yes, please do.
I have a virtual middle finger when it comes to figures.
Middle finger is
a
common thing tonight, yes.
But when it comes to figures, or when people ask me figures, I mean, here in the Netherlands, we do not register. And if you don't register, then you're not visible, then it's not a priority.
They don't register female mutilation, and they don't register the marital captivity?
Well, I mean,
just
we're
vague.
I mean, we can go, we can make plans to go to the Boon, but we cannot make, you know, a plan to register it in the right way.
Right.
But I think it happens. And we also have a clash with academics, because we say, well, these issues are going on. And they say, well, no, first we have to do research on it. And then I say, well, how many research do you need? So that's one thing. And the second thing, we need a holistic approach, not only to combat female genital mutilation or forced marriages, marital captivity. When I look to the migrant women here in the Netherlands, and there are figures when it comes to the labor participation of Turkish and Moroccan women, only 31% are economically independent, as compared to 56% of native Dutch women. And you know, I think, I mean, in my case, I mean, I experienced it myself also, the marital captivity issue. I mean, you can fight it successfully if you have resources and if you have knowledge. And I had both. So I think I'm very privileged, but many women are not. And then I want to go a step further, because when we work in the neighborhoods within the migrant communities, the majority of the women who are not employed, who don't have a job, even don't have their own bank account. And that's what's making me angry. I'm a born angry activist, woman, Muslim woman, migrant woman, whatever. Because when we look to Dutch foreign policy on women's rights, we even have a task force on gender equality and women's rights. And that includes inclusive finance, that each woman in developing countries, they deserve a bank account, access to insurances, and so much more. Secondly, we do support their sexual and reproductive rights. We do support policies to prevent sexual SOAs. You know
sexual
what I mean?
transmitted diseases,
Yes.
STDs.
And it's a holistic approach, but we also support women's rights organizations to fight gender equality. And when we look here, what I face, I mean, Femme for Freedom, we have a mouth like this, we have a big mouth, and we are outspoken when it comes to injustice, and also injustice within the system. Then we are always threatened even by white feminists that, hey, if you don't listen to us, we'll sue you. For example, the women's shelters cause. 2/3 of the women in the Dutch women's shelters are non-Western women with a Muslim background, but none of the members of the board or a director is from a migrant background.
So because we're going to go to the audience in a bit, because you must all have questions I forgot to ask.
And they stop our funding.
What do you need? If you want to say something, what do you need? What do you want to say?
We need sisterhood. We need universal
What does sisterhood mean for you?
Sisterhood, I need men, I need women, I need black people, I need white people. I mean, I believe we need everybody, people from all traditions, atheists, we need Jews, we need Christians, we need everybody, a coalition for women's rights, gender equality, and human rights. And not, you know, I mean, writing our funds that, hey, don't give them funding because they are promoting sexual and reproductive rights. This is what's happening. I mean, academics are writing opinion articles to national newspapers that, hey, don't give them funding for that campaign. I mean, would they dare to do this when it comes to a white woman? A white female director? No, they don't dare to. Sorry.
Well, I have a question though.
Can we end with that question?
I mean, I'm curious why people are writing and who are these women? You know, it sounds. I mean, that's terrible. People should have solidarity, but I think the question might be, I mean, who are the partners with whom you work, right? I mean, in other words, there may be something that is preventing some show of solidarity because of organizations or countries or states or whatever that an organization is partnering with. So for example, you were telling me earlier that your organization has partnered with an Israeli organization for women's rights. Now, I can imagine that there may be very many feminist organizations, you know, everywhere in the world who might draw the line at that particular, you know, connection that you forged, you know, with an organization that may be doing very good work, but it is located and funded and is part of the state of Israel. And many feminists, for very good reason, will not endorse that particular relationship.
Okay, Shirin,
I mean, I'm sorry, there are things that need to be looked at very many different levels.
Please respond, the last words of you.
I only discussed it with you that we work together with, a Jewish organization in Israel.
Not Jewish, you said
Israeli. I mean, whether it's Jewish, it's in the state of Israel. We work together with them, but we also work together with organizations.
Me too.
In their neighborhoods, the Muslim organizations, we don't exclude anybody. We need a coalition when it comes to human rights. And Jewish women, especially women in Israel, I mean, thousands, tens of thousands of women there are living in marital captivity. And I feel them, and they feel me, and I feel you, and you feel me, and many other activists.
If there are women in black organizations that have worked with Palestinian solidarity organizations, that's very different from supporting organizations or working with organizations that really are okay with the state of Israel and its, you know, illegitimate actions in. No, you have to judge. What do you mean?
Okay, can I end you there? Because I am sure that
I have to ask
this
first,
phrase,
is that a good organization? I have really a lot of Jewish and Christian friends, and the common values and the goal are human rights and women's rights, and I think we are healthy enough to decide, you know, if we can work together with people who are in the same way, or if they are racists and anti-democrats.
Okay. On that note, there are two ladies there with a microphone. I must ask you not to grab hold of the mic, and also to ask a question, not tell a story. I have a lady here in the front.
Hello, my name is Nazima. I have a question for Shirin. Can you explain what Ms. Fawzia Afzal-Kahn told? Because you also partnered with Leefbaar Rotterdam, who is targeting Muslims in Rotterdam. So how you can expect from us Muslim sisterhood? Because they are targeting our sisters and brothers in Rotterdam.
Because that's fake news. We work together with the city of Rotterdam.
Sorry, I was okay. Maybe there's some explanation is needed. There was a poster campaign in the council, the council community of Rotterdam, that was initiated by Femme for Freedom.
Femme for Freedom, yes.
And your question is about the fact that in the council itself there was a right-wing party that supported this campaign. Am I right? And you're asking her whether it's wise to team up with these kind of friends.
Sisterhood, it's very difficult, even if it's fake or not. But the, how do you call it? The contamination with it, that Femme for Freedom is working together with Leefbaar Rotterdam, who specifically is anti-Muslim, anti-migration. So it's very hard if you say it's fake news, because in the Muslim community, it's still, they think it's very true news.
Well, that's a narrative of the Muslim party Nida, nothing more and nothing less. Oh God, yes. But I want to say it was not only supported by Leefbaar Rotterdam, I mean, but also by D66, by VVD, and also CDA, CDA. So it was the board of Rotterdam, the municipality of Rotterdam, who supported this. And you can check it on the poster, Gemeente Rotterdam.
Okay,
very
on
big,
that note,
the logo.
There's a gentleman over there who asked a question as well.
So it's very difficult for me not to ask a question without a kind of introduction. I'm Dino Sohnic, I'm director of Maru Foundation, which is a queer Muslim organization. I'm a gay Muslim activist myself. And I'm extremely in solidarity, especially with Seyran Ateş, because of this situation. It's disturbing me and it's reminding me how many of us are also walking around with extra security if we have an open event. On that note, I would also say that if we are looking for solidarity among sisters and especially among Muslim women, it is extremely important not to call yourself a first female imam.
I do not do that.
Yeah,
I never say that.
I never say that. And the movie is saying that.
I always correct that people.
Yeah, so it's extremely important to correct it and to also to come back on that, because it is erasing a legacy, a long legacy of Muslim women.
So what's your question?
So my question is to Fawzia. I don't like that because I do need introduction as somebody that is going to that question. But okay, you cut me off. For Fawzia, first of all, thank you for balancing this conversation. It's extremely important to hear that voice as well. So what is the reductionist approach to Islam, as we heard it in the movie as well? Limiting, how is that approach limiting our conversations on position of Muslim women?
So you're talking about the film we just saw?
And the conversation we had tonight, that we mostly have.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's also a question of, how it's framed and how the questions are asked. So, of course, I am an old colleague and friend of Ibrahim, and so I understand, where he's coming from, and I do, in general, certainly support the effort that he's making here, and I very much respect the work that I think the two women on my right are doing. I mean, so that said, I do think that, for example, starting off with the kind of question that the film starts off with is, it can be problematic. I mean, it has to be, then kind of teased out, because it's not about, to say that women, why have women in Islam, knowing, as Ibrahim himself says, is that I've grown up with strong women and I've seen and met so many strong women in Islam, then why is it that Muslim women agree to these subservient positions? And that's a generalized statement. It's a huge generalization. I mean, I think that the fact that he brings me in to give some context, I appreciate that, because I actually really disagree with the framing of that question. I mean, women from day one of Islam have been very important in criticizing, in standing up. I mean, we don't have to go far, right? You look at the first woman who, in fact, was the first person who became Muslim, Hazrat Khadija, Prophet Muhammad's, wife, much older than him. And, come on. She was not subservient to him in any way. In fact, she supported him when he was, she was, in fact, he was a kept man, let's put it that way, right? So we've had a long history, and so to erase that or to say that that hasn't happened and sort of start in media res with that question is a problem. I think that the film, and I think this is Ibrahim's intention, is to then slowly disentangle and allow for that particular statement to be somewhat challenged. So I want to see how the rest of the film unfolds, but so that's one of the reductionist. Unfortunately, it can end up that way. So I'm there, as you said, hopefully as a kind of a voice that's maybe not very popular, but needs to be there.
Very good question. That I saw a hand going up in the back there.
Oh, you hold it, okay. Yeah, my name is Anja Hensch. I have a question along the lines of human rights and equality for women. Shirin Musa said we want equality on all levels. And the question from a Muslim perspective is actually how to get there. What are the strategies in terms of, and this is also a question for Seyran Ateş, how do you see that also as a theologian? I mean, there are theologians like Amina Wadud, but also feminists like the late Fatima Menissi, who were advocating and who are, in the case of Amina Wadud, still advocating for the fact that you need to get to that equality on the basis of Islam. That is, in a way that you need to interpret the surahs, the hadith, from the perspective, from a Muslim feminist perspective, to make that be accepted in the Muslim community. And that means that you have a different line of argumentation there to reach the same goal as the goal of human rights and the equality of men and women through the human rights. So I would very much like to know what your opinion is about that. I mean, both, especially Seyran Ateş and Shirin Musa, about that strategy. I mean, to put it more as an example.
Can I ask Ms. Ateş? Yeah, I have a very easy strategy. We opened the mosque for that reason. Yeah. This is a strategy. I worked 8 years on this idea, and as I mentioned here, or maybe did I mention that here?
You mentioned it this afternoon, that the solution to many of our problems is to open a mosque.
You see the name of the co-author of this movie, Zabine Janicki. She made a movie in 2009 about me, and a documentary, and in this documentary in 2009 we had our first meeting for the idea of the mosque. It was a result of my membership of German Islam Conference from 2006 till 2009. In this 4 years, I've seen that we inside the Muslim community who are not agreeing with the role models and the gender apartheid, who are criticizing the situation, we have to stand up and change something. And the strategy was to open a mosque, because we have to start a theological debate, and that's what we are doing. We are, and Amina Wadud was one of the first and one of the important role models, and Fatima Menissi for sure, and Hatija anyway. But the Muslims have to understand Hatija and the story. It's not that the whites and the Christians or Jewish or the Western world is not accepting her role. My position is much more that to explain and discuss with the Muslims, especially the patriarchy and the Muslim men who are not accepting different, plural role models of women. This is our issue, and the first book what we published as Ibn Rushd Goethe Mosque, this is the name of our mosque, was Women in Medina. And we translate a little book from Jesper Petersen, he's from Denmark, and we describe the different role models in the beginning of the Muslim community and Islam, coming first of all being female imam or fighters in the war, like the Kurdish women here, and also scholars. All these roles were given to women in the beginning. Why not? In Mecca, since 1,400 years, women and men pray together. It's forbidden to cover your face. So these all things, this is our strategy, to discuss and debate inside our Muslim community worldwide, do the best what we can do to show the plurality, not to say this is the real and good Islam. This is definitely not our strategy and not our goal, not our issue, and not our singing. It's not our opinion. We just want to show with our mosque that some people need another place than the traditional mosques. Therefore, we have to open such a place. This is a strategy. And I think it's a better strategy. It's not the better, it's one of the most important strategy, because we are working on reformation in the religion. So we have to go in the religion. It's not enough to fight from outside and criticize and say to the organizations and the men, leaders, the countries like Turkey or Iran and Egypt who wrote fatwas against us, you are wrong, you are bad. We have to show that there's something different possible. This is a strategy.
I see.
And the name of the method is reading historical critical, that, as you may know. Yeah.
I don't know how much time we've got left. 5 minutes. Sorry, this lady was first.
Just a small question.
Oh, wait for the microphone, please, because then everybody can hear it.
I'm not that good at English, but I'm asking myself how you can achieve the respect of the Muslim community there in Germany, where you are in Imam, and you are praying without a fail. Don't you have any trouble getting their respect at the same time? Because it's very unusual, I think. I never saw it before. So,
you know, there are. Now, maybe you never heard about that before, but. I'm a Muslim for 40 years, so. I'm sorry, what?
I'm a Muslim for already 40 years, so.
More than 15 years, I think, almost. It's a group of progressive Muslim for progressive values in the States, and the Inclusive Mosque in London, and there are many, many other examples. People are practicing that. I'm surprised. I don't know what you mean, that you never heard.
Amina Wadoud, I read her books, but I never saw it, so I was surprised when I saw the movie. I said, oh, because I was a lot in this community, and when you are inside of the community, you notice where this respect stops. And then, can you make yourself believable for them? So maybe behind your back they will say some things like, oh, just I don't know.
The question is... I don't really understand what you mean. I don't want to turn...
I mean, how do you reach the Muslim community?
How do you reach the conservative, maybe?
The conservative ones? You mean the traditional ones?
Yeah, the traditional ones, yes.
Yeah.
Because there where the problems are.
No, I'm sorry to... maybe I don't understand you all, but, you know, my goal is not to go in the traditional mosques and turn they around or change their life. And
maybe to improve their lives too.
I know this. As an activist and as a human rights fighter and women's rights fighter and as feminist, I learned that if there's something in the society, every issue, what you can imagine, if you have your own opinion with other people, so you can just prove that something maybe is wrong in the society if you stand up and show and practice that. This is what we are doing. I cannot fight with the conservatives, what I already did. I can discuss with them. I had debates. I was sitting on the German Islam conference and I was discussing with the men, but they never accept us because they have their line. And what history show us is reformation or changes in society, even the reality that, or the fact that we are wearing now pants and not everybody is sitting and the women are sitting here with dress, you know, all the changings in gender issues takes time and needs people who do that. Just do. By doing that, we can show and prove those people. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not taking your being a conservative away from you. You can be traditional and conservative for you as well. Even when I'm here existing, what we are just doing is to show there are men and women who wants to pray together. That doesn't mean it should be forbidden to separate men and women. We opened a mosque where LGBT people are very, very welcome. That doesn't mean that you have to open also your doors and talk about that and accept, but you have to accept it as a democrat under our constitution. That's it. This is how we can do it.
I think I'm going to end the night there. I'm sure there's plenty more debate to be had. Go to the bar, have a drink, and debate amongst yourself. I want to thank these three powerhouses of women. Give them a hand. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. That's it for me.
What we can do is say, in our mosque, there's a woman, Zuzi. She's calling for prayer every Friday for a mixed group in a mosque, in a place called mosque. And worldwide, there's no another woman doing that. This is unique. And what I did as a female leader first is open a place with the name mosque. That was really a big, big problem for many men and women. And 5 men came 2 days after we opened, and from DTIP, the Turkish organization, and Milli Görüş, and asked me or say, we have to close this place because we are not allowed to call it mosque. That's really unique what we are doing there with all this together. But my role models were all around the world. There are thousands of men and women doing this. This is what I have to underline. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.